So welcome to the Node.js Next 10 team meeting for April 8th, 2021. We were just having a discussion as people kind of joined the meeting. We weren't sure if we were going to have enough for the meeting, but we do. So we're starting the live stream. Couple things I want to just mention before we move back to the conversation that we were having. The first one is that we've had about 2,500 responses to our survey. So I think that's doing pretty good in my opinion. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking like maybe we say like one more, give a, hey, heads up, we're going to close the survey in one more week. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, if that sounds good, I'll go ahead and let Rachel know that, but I'm really happy, and thanks to anybody who's listening, like for people who've responded, that's a great response to have 2,500 people give us that data, and so we should have that in the next few weeks to look at and use to validate the work that we've been doing here. The second one was we moved the meeting to this time, but it seems like it's more challenging to a number of the members, and so I'll take the action to open a new issue to move the time to some other time, because the last few times we haven't really been reaching critical mass. And then three, we'll move back then to the discussion, and I think this came out from some of the discussion in the earlier TSC meeting around primordials and security, and it led to the discussion around security fits in and trade-offs and all that kind of stuff in terms of the Next 10, and I think it's a very good thing for us to factor in, because I don't think we've raised that as one of the things which could be critical to the the next 10 years of evolution of Node in terms of not necessarily the specifics, but that we have a good handle on what our model is, what the pieces are that support it, and a strong understanding of what we need to do to support that. So I think back to you, Bradley. You were saying sort of there's the trade-off in terms on the security side of things, right?
So this is what I think we need to do, at least in this kind of meeting, is figure out how we can document how compromises existed and were resolved or could be resolved. So we do have the constituencies, and whenever two constituencies are at odds with each other, individuals could have different priorities for each of the constituencies.
Right.
So like in the previous call, we had a priority of performance over a priority for robustness or security, however you want to see it. We don't have a clear definition of security in Node. Chrome has a very specific definition of security. So things like almost all the NPM CVEs are not considered security problems by the Chrome project, because Chrome has scoped it just to basically exploits on their code generation side of things. So if your website has a bug and it leaks credit cards because of some usage of a JavaScript API, they would never consider that a security problem. This was brought up briefly in the previous TSC meeting just a little bit ago, that if people do weird things in their third-party modules, like, is that something that Node needs to consider a security problem? And like, we don't have a clear definition of what that is. So I think we need to just kind of tease out the definition of security and like give examples of times where like you would want to open up potential security problems to allow for usability. So we do have that open PR on Node about making policies more compatible with import maps. And basically no security person ever wants you to use that PR's features. But people want things to work in a cross-compatible manner. They might only be generating import maps. So we have to open it up for them in order for them to use at least part of the security features that we provide.
Right. And
Um,
I think part of the issue too is that the security features benefit often is context and environment dependent. So like in one environment, it might be really, really valuable, but in some other environment, it may not actually be adding value. I mean,
oh
I
yeah,
think back to the Java security model, and like, you know, as far as I understand, most people run with that disabled because in the environment that they're running it in, it's not an issue to do that, right? And so, you know, while on the face, the people might be like, well, why could you just disable the security manager, right? It actually makes sense for a large number of deployments. So it's kind of the same thing I think you're talking about here, is trying to factor that into what we do, right?
yeah. So like you said, most people by default run without any sort of sandboxing or stuff like that. Um, Even if you run with sandboxing by default, kind of what Dino does, people tend to just enable the flags that make it run. Um,
Right.
so you might still have ESLint, you know, using HTTP, um, just because some portion of it does, or you ran some plugin that does for some reason. Um, so security features are almost always opt-in, and performance features are almost always opt-out in some way. And so these are very different approaches, um, at least in JavaScript. So I think what we could do is, like Darcy recommended, we write up some documents of use cases where a compromise made sense, so that instead of going through and eventually bubbling up to the TSC and just getting kind of individual opinions, they can think more towards what compromises could be had rather than a blanket statement of we should or we should not. So,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
definitely.
drop.
Sorry, go ahead. Okay.
I'm gonna have to drop here, but just to top up on that, like, and my comment that I made there, it might be good just as a practice, start documenting when we know to identify when we know that there's two of these values that we've identified, let's say performance and security, that are at odds in PR in some set of work that's being presented. And when we choose, like we decide, like, you know, speed is going to win over here, performance is going to win over here, we just document that somewhere and we just continue to like create a collection of data, decision making data, like data set, so that over time, like, really, we don't have to like draw a line in the sand today, but we could really say, what's the project actually care about? And if we just document the decision making, at least we'll, you know, in a year from now, you would see, hey, look, it seems that we always care about performance over security. Like that, just the way that we're making decisions then just naturally comes out of that data set. Like if we start documenting, that, right? So I'm not sure how we could do that, or if it's just, you know, in PRs, we're always saying that this is a feature that is improving, let's say, performance, or it's improving stability, or it's improving whatever it is, and start documenting like and labeling even maybe PRs that way, and then at least we'll have like the information like about what it seems like organically is happening, versus trying to impose like impose sort of like values, sort of see what the organic values are, because we just don't know today. We don't know why things are winning, but maybe we can see a trend if we start to bubble up like the that data. So that was kind of like my idea with, hey, at least right now we could also document some historical use cases where we see these two things were at odds and what won. But it'd be good just to, as a practice, from here on out, start to try to document each time that there was like, obviously like folks had lots of discourse. It wasn't an easy PR to like get pulled in. There wasn't a feature that just landed like everybody agreed on. I don't know. That's just sort of my recommendation in terms of how we can maybe make this easier on ourselves than trying to make more assumptions and trying to sort of
I just,
go
as
splunking. Yeah.
a summary of what you're saying, I think we may, as a group, say one of the key things for continued success is to figure out how to make the, you know, the processes and data and all that kind of stuff for making those, trying to make those decisions easier and based more on past experience versus, you know, an individual discussion every time kind of thing.
Yeah, I just want to see the trend. Like I would love to see just like 100 decisions were made in the project in the last month, and they reflected on this category, like performance, or they like leaned this way against maybe something else, like right, like if there was two competing things that like these like what won out each time. So yeah, I gotta drop, but
Yep.
yeah, I'll talk to y'all soon.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that would be nice. I don't know if it's just too difficult for us to categorize everything, because that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think we'd have to figure out a lightweight way to do something like that. Like, can't be 100 decisions a week, right? Like, there's just no way. But if there was like one decision a month, then you might be able to figure it out.
Yeah, because I know almost nobody subscribes to the main notification for
Right.
core anymore.
But, you know, if we come out with like, here are the top 5 things the project we think is important for the ongoing success, and this is one of them, then, you know, that might bring some attention to like, okay, what is it? Don't know what the answer is that's practical, but like, okay, let's think about that and see if we can move forward.
So I think some interesting stuff here is there are like weekly newsletters on things, like on interesting developments in Node, and maybe we could just see what they've been, you know, spewing out. That's what people are interested in. Because
Which
a lot of
newsletters do you mean, like
Oh,
Node
gosh.
Weekly or something?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And blog posts, things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of them talk about new features. A lot of them talk about performance, and they also talk about security releases. There are very few that discuss the details of security releases, which is fine. But I think there's some interesting stuff that we could do there, where just like, instead of going through and being proactive about it, we could be reactionary and just be like, oh, this was interesting enough that it kind of got spread around the community. We should document why afterwards.
Right.
Because I think being proactive about it is a lot of effort. But
yeah, we got to find something that's practical, like that, so it actually happens.
Yeah, so, and that could lead to people feeling more like we're engaging. So like, people were interested in this topic, and then we could be like, since people were interested in this, we can explain why.
Mm-hmm.
So Mateo, I keep picking on him, but he went through and he kind of explained this HTTP regression this past week, and how he found it, what he thought it was. And a good example of this is like the performance regression commit. For one of them was actually the message of the commit was not the correct subsystem.
Right.
So the primordials commit wasn't actually slower because of primordials. It was slower because they changed a debug log statement.
Okay.
And so like, we have to, it would be good for us to kind of go back and explain things retroactively rather than trying to go and explain everything we do. And Matteo did go and he explained like the actual problem going on.
Okay, so did in the end it not have to do with primordials, or did it?
Ooh, that's a
Okay, it's
a
not that
complicated-
clear. Okay,
it's primordials definitely affected it,
okay,
but not in a large way. So yes,
okay.
it did affect it, but probably in a way that we would have been okay with. The debug log that was in the same commit, we would not have been okay
Right.
with.
Right, and I mean, he basically said it's pretty much resolved now, so I don't know how that was resolved, but
Oh, literally debug log, when you make one, it gives you a callback function to replace it after its first use.
Mhm.
That's it. It was just missing that.
right. So in the end, it wasn't like you said, the change, the promoters change, whatever effect it did have was acceptable. It was just how we got there and how, if the change wasn't being made in the first place, it probably we wouldn't have had the problem, right? But
Correct.
there was a way to get to a compromise that everybody was happy with effectively.
Yeah, and so this is a great story because it has like all sorts of things going on. It has like a misleading commit. It has like performance. It has robustness in question, and all of these kind of tied together. And even though we saw a degradation of performance, we were okay keeping it.
Right.
And so it's a great example of this kind of compromise
Because it
workflow.
was, a reason. I mean, because yeah, there's a degradation and then there's a degradation, right? So
Yeah. And so this is kind of what I'm hoping we can start figuring out how to go and give examples for basically the higher ups to see. Because a lot of times we see knee-jerk reactions in the TSC, at least as an outsider.
yeah, I wouldn't, and I wouldn't. Since I'm there and involved, I probably wouldn't say knee jerk, but it's very difficult to have the complete picture in a lot of these cases. So the headlines can basically steer you in the wrong direction easily.
So this is why it's great though, because people who only see the commit that was the problem, if they don't dig deeper, like they would think primordials are at fault.
Right.
And so this is the kind of thing where we have like this amazing example where if you did just go and make a knee-jerk reaction, you'd be wrong.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we want. We want to give examples of things that are intentionally misleading so that the TSC can make more serious judgment, maybe, by having examples where, hey, even though you see a commit, you should look at the code of the commit because it may be misleading.
Right.
Rather than stating, oh, the commit message means there's a problem with HTTP. It could be there's a problem with, util formatting got slow.
Yeah, I think in like Mateo's major comment was that we're not getting the right people CC'd on them. And so I don't know if that's where the prefix not being right part is the concern. It's like, how do we make sure that if we're changing code in HTTP, that team is aware, gets to take a look, and does the sniff test, because they can probably do the best job on that, right?
So this is also interesting here because this specific commit is like it's the golden child. It's like it's in HTTP, but the problem comes from util, and it's labeled something else. It's like just absolute chaos, which makes it amazing because it gives you a lot more thought process to work through. You have
Right.
like identify if the right people reviewed this PR. That should probably be step one, and just go to them so that you can go there before you escalate it to the TSC.
Right.
Because right now we kind of just go directly to the TSC eventually, but the TSC can kick it back to whoever they think is the appropriate person.
Right.
And I think that that's important here, like Matteo, like what you were saying, getting it to the right people,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
because those people may come back and be like, I don't know. And then we could be like, okay, well, is there somebody that knows? Yes or no? If nobody knows, probably we should figure out what's going on. Yeah.
Right.
But that's a purely reactive workflow. I don't have a good idea of a proactive workflow where when you get a PR, how to get it to the right set of eyes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Just also looking at the other things we've been working on in terms of the technical brainstorming list. I think we've got some more feedback in terms of the board that we posted for the collaborators. Let me just see if I can find that here, because it looks to me like there may be some new things on there, things I don't recognize from the last time. Yeah, I definitely do see, and I see more. Let me just sort order by votes. And I'll share it just this is it.
Oh, hey, TypeScript. We added a tsconfig today. Yeah.
Okay. So that seems to be like, yeah, you know, that we had 3 from the group when we brainstormed, and it's up to 12. Serverless WebAssembly has obviously got a fair amount. Permissions policies are actually there as a good number. Transaction tracing, open telemetry, single binary. Okay, so we've definitely gotten some more feedback from the collaborators, which is good. And some additional, I think some additionals like zero knowledge, object capability, and cryptocurrency.
I'm not sure what cryptocurrency means, but sure.
Those I don't quite understand how they relate.
So object
agree.
capability is just permissions. You can merge that in.
Right.
I don't know what zero knowledge is.
Yeah, we might have to just do a little bit prospecting on that. Modern HTTP, obviously quite high. ESM documentation. Okay, so that's good to see that we've got some additional feedback from the, maybe I will stop. We don't have a lot more time this week, so I'm going to say maybe I will post in there again just as a with the results. So if you have not commented yet. I'm just commented / added your input yet, please do. So I'm just commenting on the discussion item that, like, in about a week, we'll start to working with the results. And so that in advance for next meeting, we can actually go through it as a larger team and review that and figure out what we're going to do based on that. So in terms of some of these things, I'm wondering, Bradley, if maybe it would make sense for you to open a couple of issues.
Yeah, I can
You know,
open up a couple of issues, and I think
like maybe go ahead.
I think we need to split out reactive versus proactive workflows entirely.
Right. I'm just thinking for, like, you know, an issue which says, you know, one of the key things might be, you know, the process and data to help make those decisions easier or whatever. I don't know the right wording for that, but that kind of topic that we've been discussing. And then another one around the having a well-defined and agreed security model and that topic.
Yeah, so I think we can open up one for security model, just defining what we mean by security,
Right.
which is kind of part of the model itself. We can open up one on a playbook for investigating these conflicts, I would say. Because
I think that's a good, like, that's a part of the solution, but I'd try and also just say, like, here's the problem that we think is important to solve for ongoing success. And then you could say, and a playbook is like the way that we're thinking is, you know, maybe a practical way to do that.
well, I'm trying to figure out how we resolve conflicts. So I'm trying to figure out how to phrase that.
Yeah.
So like something like, for our ongoing success, we need to properly identify experts and compromises when tensions occur for the constituencies.
This is what I put as the description that I'd written in the minutes. The key thing could be to build process data to help for the project make decisions with conflicting values constituencies.
Yeah, we could do that.
That's kind of like we want to do that, and then, you know, like building a playbook is probably a practical way, or whatever other, we can discuss whatever other ways to achieve that would be. Because I think that, do you think that captures kind of what we think is important to do?
Sounds good to me. I'm not
Okay.
too picky with words.
Sure. That one just seems like it's like that's the root of what we want to do. Sort of how we do it, we've got to figure out still, and could have a couple different things even. But that does, you know, in terms of the, we haven't actually gone through it from that lens, so we might even want to do that at some point. Is like, what do we struggle with today, right? Like, we've been thinking about what are our values, what the constituencies need, but another lens of looking like, you know, what we need to do in going forward is like, well, what do we currently struggle with and what slows us down, right? Because I think this one kind of is fairly obvious when you think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, slowing us down is interesting because we can slow down to. So there's a phrase that Charlie Robbins likes: is you move slow to go fast. So there's definitely something about long-term speed versus short-term speed that I think would be hard to capture if we went the route of trying to state of this is something that slows us down, because it could slow us down in the short term but prevent us from having problems in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I know what you're saying. At least this description, basically, I think we struggle with making decisions, and being comfortable that we're doing them at, like, because I totally agree. Like, you know, you could make decisions too fast too, right? Like, I think we struggle with making them and being comfortable we're doing them in an appropriate time frame, whatever that happens to be, right?
So maybe that's how we could do it, is finding the data for appropriate time. If we could gather data on missed opportunities, that would be great.
Right.
But I don't know of many missed opportunities.
Some of those, it's hard to know when you've missed it unless it's a really big problem, right? You probably,
Yeah.
you find out after the fact, and by then it's a little moot because you're already out of business or whatever. But yeah, no, so, okay, so yeah, no, I think, because yeah, I think starting to build a list of, we've got some like the technical priorities, we'll be able to pull some of that out of these, this one brainstorm. But capturing some of these things is like, these could be key things that are part of the success and issues, so we can talk about them. Capture what we've already talked about and not forget them would be good.
Yeah, and I'm going to open up these 2 issues on the Next 10 repo for now.
Yep. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I think in this repo, I could kind of see that at some point we want to boil it down to like, here are the top 5 things maybe that we think are important to do, right? And, yes, there's this list of 20 and, but these are the 5 we think the project should focus on. And at that point, we'll need the broader input and maybe even we get the broader input to help choose those, but we should build up that list here and then we can take a sort of a, hopefully a well-explained list to the broader group, kind of like we did for the technical ones. Okay, that sounds good. I think that's, are there other things we should discuss? I think on the technical areas, we should wait till we get a little bit more input, given that extra week to sort of dive into that. We only have 6 minutes anyway. In terms of the survey, next time we'll have some data on from that as well. So I'm not sure as if there's anything else we should talk about this week. If not, maybe we'll close out and if everybody can look out for that issue on the meeting times and we'll try and get that updated to make sure we get more people as well. So, okay, talk to everybody later. Bye.
See ya. Have a good one.
Thanks.